Welcome back to Law's Seekers. Tonight, we explore what would happen if the ultimate symbol of order was thrust into the ultimate world of chaos, Batman in the Fallout Wasteland. Imagine Gotham's Dark Knight, a man defined by his unbreakable rules, facing a world where rules get you killed. We will follow his journey as his detective skills uncover the Commonwealth's darkest secrets, and as the Wasteland's corruption begins to seep past his armor, attacking not just his body with radiation, but his very soul. This story covers how his greatest strengths become his most terrible vulnerabilities in a world that breaks everything it touches. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. He arrived without a sound, no flash of light, no tear in the sky. One moment, the alley was empty, filled only with radioactive dust and the scent of decay. The next he was there, a shadow darker than the rest. He stood perfectly still, a statue carved from night and vengeance. His suit's sensors screamed warnings he did not understand. Geiger counters clicked a frantic rhythm inside his cowl. The air itself was a poison. This was not Gotham. This was a grave. He moved through the ruins of the city. It was called Boston, according to the faded signs. But it was a Boston he had never known. Buildings were skeletal things, picked clean by time and fire. Cars were rusted hulks, frozen in their final moments of panic. And the silence was wrong. It was a hungry silence, filled with the scuttling of unseen things. His boots made no sound on the cracked pavement. He was a phantom in a world of ghosts. His first lesson in this new world came from a pack of dogs. They were not the strays of Gotham. Their flesh was peeled back, revealing raw muscle and bone. Their eyes glowed with a sickly green light. They charged him, jaws snapping, driven by a mindless, agonizing hunger. He moved with a brutal efficiency that was almost ballet. A twist of a limb, a precise strike to a nerve cluster. He did not kill them. He disabled them. But as he left them writhing on the ground, he felt a profound sense of wrongness. The world itself seemed to demand death, and he had refused to pay its toll. He found a settlement huddled in the shell of an old church. The people inside were thin, their eyes wide with a permanent fear. They clutched crude pipe pistols and looked at him as if he were a monster from a forgotten tale. He did not speak. He watched from the shadows of a collapsed bell tower. He saw their desperation. He saw the rot in the floorboards and the hunger in their children's faces. And he saw the raiders watching them from a nearby rooftop. There were a dozen of them. They were loud, crude, and armed with automatic weapons cobbled together from scrap. They laughed as they prepared to storm the church, eager for the meager supplies and the cruelty they would inflict. This was familiar territory. This was the scum he had sworn to fight, but the methods would have to be different. He dropped from the tower like a stone. He landed behind the largest raider, the one with a chain wrapped around his fist. The man turned, his face a mask of surprise, just before a gauntlet crashed into his jaw. The crack of bone was unnervingly loud in the quiet ruin. One by one, he moved through them. He was not a man. He was a force of nature. He used the environment, the shadows, the fear they radiated like heat. A raider fired his weapon wildly into the darkness, only to have it ripped from his hands. Another screamed as a bat-shaped projectile pinned his arm to a wall. They broke. They fled into the night, screaming about a demon bat that hunted in the ruins. They left their weapons behind. He did not pursue them. He watched them go, and a cold understanding settled in his gut. Fear was a currency here, just as it was in Gotham, but it was far more volatile. He entered the church. The settlers stared, their fear of him now mixed with a fragile awe. An old man, the leader, stepped forward. He held a rusty shotgun, but his hands trembled. "What are you?" the old man asked, his voice a dry rasp. He did not answer. He simply looked at their frightened faces. He saw the wounds that needed tending, the fortifications that needed reinforcing. He saw a problem that needed a solution. He spent the rest of the night working. He used the raiders' discarded weapons to create tripwires and alarms. He showed them how to reinforce their doors, how to create choke points. He moved with a silent, relentless purpose that unnerved them more than the raiders' threats. By dawn, the church was no longer a shelter, it was a fortress. Before the sun's pale, sickly light touched the horizon, he was gone. But he left something behind, a symbol. Scratched into the main door of the church was the crude outline of a bat. A warning, a promise. His new home became the labyrinthine tunnels of the metro system. It was dark. It was defensible. It was filled with the ghosts of the old world. He found a maintenance junction, a large cavern of concrete and steel, far from the reach of the surface dwellers. This would be his cave. He began to salvage. He was a master of technology, but the technology here was alien. Vacuum tubes sat alongside sophisticated laser emitters. Nuclear batteries powered primitive computers. It was a bizarre fusion of past and future, all of it decaying. He found a functional terminal, its green screen flickering to life under his touch. He bypassed the ancient security protocols with ease. He began to learn. He read about the Great War of 2077, about the bombs, about Vault-Tec and their cruel experiments. He read about the new horrors that plague this world. Ghouls, supermutants, deathclaws. The file on the forced evolutionary virus chilled him more than anything Scarecrow's fear toxin ever had. It was a perversion of life itself, a manufactured plague of muscle and rage. His detective's mind began to connect the dots. The settlers had spoken of people who weren't people, friends and family acting strangely, their eyes empty before disappearing. They called them synths. The terminal described the Institute, a phantom organization that lived underground, creating artificial humans. A conspiracy hidden beneath the wasteland's chaos. It was a mystery, and he was the only one who could solve it. He began his patrols. Every night he swept through the ruins. He learned the landscape. He mapped the raider territories, the nests of feral ghouls, the hunting grounds of mutated beasts. He gathered information. He was a whisper in the dark. A rumor passed between scavengers. They said a shadow stalked the Commonwealth, a creature that took down entire raider gangs without firing a shot. One night, he found a man being cornered by a group from the Gunners. They were mercenaries, better equipped than raiders, but just as cruel. The man they had cornered was terrified. He was trying to protect a small metal case. Batman intervened. The fight was short and brutal. He used smoke pellets, disorientation charges, and the sheer terror his silhouette inspired. The Gunners fled, leaving their unconscious comrades behind. The man he saved was named Deacon. He was not what he seemed. He offered thanks, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He looked at the bat symbol on Batman's chest. "Never seen a get-up like that," Deacon said, a little too casually. "You with the Brotherhood, or one of the Atom Cats?" Batman remained silent. He just stared at the man. Deacon sighed, dropping the facade. All right. Tough crowd. Look, whatever you are, you just made some powerful enemies. But you also made a potential friend." He gestured with his head. "I'm with the Railroad. We help people. Specifically, we help synths." The pieces clicked into place. "The abductions," Batman said, his voice a low growl that seemed to vibrate the air. It was the first time he had spoken to anyone in this world. Deacon's eyes widened slightly. "So you've heard. The Institute kidnaps people and replaces them with synth duplicates. We get the real ones out. We give the escaped synths new lives." He looked at the dark night before him. "You're a detective, aren't you?" "I can tell. We could use someone like you, someone who isn't afraid of the dark." An alliance was offered, a path into the heart of the conspiracy, but Batman trusted no one, especially not a man who wore lies as easily as he wore his clothes. "Why should I trust you?" he asked. Deacon smiled, a genuine, tired smile. "Because we're the only ones crazy enough to fight a ghost. And right now, the Institute is the biggest ghost in the Commonwealth." He considered the offer. The Railroad had resources, information. They could be a valuable asset. But they were also a faction, with their own agenda, their own secrets. Joining them would mean being drawn into the clandestine wars of this wasteland. It would mean making choices that could doom one group to save another. If you had their power in the wasteland, would you choose NCR, Brotherhood, or stay neutral? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading them. He knew this was a world of grey, not black and white. His moral code was a relic of a world that no longer existed. Here, every action had a consequence, a ripple in a sea of suffering. Helping the Railroad could save the synths, but it might destabilize the entire region, leading to more death. Staying neutral meant allowing the Institute's evil to continue unchecked. He made his decision. He would not join them, but he would use them. "Give me your information on the Institute," he commanded. "Everything you have." Deacon hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He saw the unwavering resolve in the dark figure's eyes. This wasn't a man. It was a mission given form. The information from the Railroad was a treasure trove. It detailed suspected Institute bases, methods of operation, and names of agents. But it was all circumstantial. He needed proof. He needed to get inside. His investigation led him to a place called the Memory Den, in a settlement named Goodneighbor, a place where they could extract and view memories. The perfect tool for a detective. He found the place easily. It was a den of vice and nostalgia, run by a ghoul named Irma. He paid her in pre-war money he had salvaged, a currency she seemed to value. He wanted to see the memory of a captured Institute Corser, a relentless synth assassin. Strapped into the lounger, the world dissolved into a swirl of light and sound. He was no longer in his own body. He was inside the mind of the Corser. He saw through its eyes. He saw the pristine white walls of the Institute, a sterile paradise hidden beneath the filth of the world. He saw the scientists, their faces cold and detached. He saw the assembly line where synths were born. And he saw their leader, an old man, withered and frail, hooked up to a life support system. They called him Father. The memory was a violation, a deep intrusion into his own mind. As he processed the Corser's cold, logical thoughts, he felt something else, a subtle corruption. The Corser's programming, its absolute loyalty to the Institute, began to brush against his own consciousness. It was like a virus, a piece of code trying to find a weakness in his mental firewall. He fought it. He focused on his own memories, the death of his parents, the vow he made, the symbol he chose. He ripped himself out of the memory, gasping. Irma looked at him with concern. "You all right, handsome? You were shaking pretty bad in there." He was not all right. He had the information he needed. He knew how to get into the Institute, but he also felt a chilling change within himself. The Corser's logic was dangerously seductive. It spoke of order, of control, of saving humanity by replacing it. It was a twisted reflection of his own mission to bring order to Gotham's chaos. For the first time, he felt his own iron will begin to fray at the edges. This world didn't just attack the body with radiation. It attacked the very soul with its philosophies of despair. He was beginning to understand that the greatest threat was not the monsters or the raiders. It was the insidious idea that in a world this broken, perhaps the only way to save it was to burn it all down and start again. And that idea was terrifyingly close to his own dark thoughts on the worst nights in Gotham. He left the memory den, the Corser's thoughts still echoing in his head. He now had a target, Father, the Institute. But he also had a new enemy, the doubt that was beginning to fester in his own mind. He was the world's greatest detective, but the deepest, darkest mystery was now himself. The Wasteland was not just a place. It was a crucible designed to burn away everything a man was, leaving only what he was willing to become. And he did not know if he would like the man he was becoming. The city felt different now. Before it was a ruin to be navigated. Now it was a symptom of a disease born in the sterile labs of the Institute and the twisted boardrooms of Vault-Tec. He was no longer just a vigilante in a strange land. He was a doctor, and this entire world was his patient. The first step was to excise the tumor. He needed to get inside the Institute. He needed a Corser chip. His hunt began. He used the information from Deacon and the stolen memories to create a profile of Corser activity. They moved with purpose. They followed patterns. They were hunters, and he would hunt the hunter. The trail led him out of the city's relative safety and into the raw, untamed wasteland. The radiation levels climbed with every step he took away from the urban center. His suit's internal counter clicked faster, a constant reminder of the invisible poison he walked through. He found signs of a Corser's passage near a crashed satellite array. 2 dead raiders, killed with surgically precise laser burns to the chest, a trail of synthetic blood glowing faintly in the dark. The Corser was wounded but still moving. The trail led south, towards a place the locals spoke of in hushed, terrified whispers. The glowing sea, a monument to the day the world died. A place where the bombs fell thickest, and the very air was fire. He knew going there was suicide. His suit was designed for urban warfare, not a nuclear hellscape. The lead lining was thin. The rebreather's filters were not rated for this level of contamination. But the Corser was heading there, and he would not lose the trail. He pushed forward, into the green haze that shimmered on the horizon. The world inside the glowing sea was an alien landscape. The sky was a permanent, sickly green twilight. Jagged spires of irradiated glass clawed at the sky. The ground crunched under his boots, a mixture of ash and fused earth. His suit's alarm began to blare, a high-pitched scream he could not silence. Radiation was flooding his system. He felt a deep, chilling cold spread through his bones, a sickness that had nothing to do with temperature. He passed skeletons half buried in the ash, their bones glowing with a soft, ethereal light. Strange, mutated insects the size of dogs skittered between the glass formations. He was in the heart of the apocalypse. He was walking through the very symbol of this world's failure. And in that moment, a profound transformation began. He could feel the radiation seeping past his suit's defenses, not just attacking his cells, but changing them. Have you ever wondered which of the Wasteland's corruptions would claim them first? Drop your theories in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in thinking about this. It was here that he encountered them. A vertibird cut through the swirling green fog, its rotors beating a warlike rhythm. It landed 50 yards away, and 3 figures in bulky power armor disembarked. They carried massive laser rifles, and on their chests was a symbol of gears and a sword. The Brotherhood of Steel. Their leader, a man with a grim, square jaw, approached him. His armor was emblazoned with the rank of Paladin. "Identify yourself," the man boomed, his voice amplified by his helmet. "That is non-standard power armor. By order of Elder Maxson, you will surrender that technology for confiscation." Batman stood his ground. He did not have time for this. "I am not your enemy," he said, his voice low and hard. "Anyone hoarding advanced technology is an enemy of the Brotherhood," the Paladin retorted, raising his rifle. "Last chance. Surrender the suit." The fight was over before they knew it had begun. He deployed a wide-band electromagnetic pulse from his gauntlet. Their power armor suits seized up, electronics fried. The Paladins were trapped inside their own steel coffins, unable to move. He walked past their frozen forms, a shadow against the green glow. He could have killed them easily. He could have taken their weapons, their armor. He took nothing. He simply continued his hunt, leaving them to wonder what kind of man could disable a full Brotherhood patrol without firing a shot. The trail ended at a cave carved into a glowing mountain. Inside, he found the Corser. It was damaged, one arm hanging uselessly at its side. It was attempting to interface with a strange, alien-looking device. It turned as he entered, its eyes cold and analytical. "Unidentified variable," the Corser said, its voice a flat, synthetic monotone. "Your interference ends now." The battle was a whirlwind of controlled violence. The Corser was faster and stronger than any human. It moved with a liquid grace, its one good arm firing a laser pistol with inhuman accuracy. But Batman was more than human. He was strategy. He was fear. He used the cave itself as a weapon, ricocheting his projectiles off the walls, using the darkness as a cloak. He targeted the Corser's joints, its optical sensors. He was not trying to destroy it. He was dismantling it piece by piece. Finally, he got in close, jamming a high-frequency disruptor against the side of its head. The Corser convulsed and fell silent. He had won. He knelt beside the inert synth. He reached for the back of its neck, feeling for the chip. But as his fingers touched the synthetic flesh, he saw something that made him pause. The Corser's face, locked in its final expression, was not one of hate or anger. It was one of confusion, as if it had just realized it was alive, in the very moment it was about to die. He took the chip. As he stood up, a wave of dizziness washed over him. His vision blurred. The radiation poisoning was setting in. He stumbled out of the cave, clutching the chip in his hand. He had his key to the Institute, but the price was a sickness that was now a part of him. A sickness that promised a slow, agonizing decay. On his journey back to Boston, he took shelter from an acid rainstorm in the entrance of a massive steel door built into a hillside. A vault, Vault 114. His curiosity, the detective's instinct, was too strong to ignore. He forced the rusted door open and descended into the darkness. The air was stale, filled with the scent of old paper and despair. The vault was a tomb. Skeletons and tattered suits lay in the halls. But it was the terminals that told the true story. This vault wasn't meant to save anyone. It was an experiment. Vault-Tec had filled it with the city's wealthiest people, providing them with every luxury. But they only appointed one man, a deranged homeless man, as the overseer. They wanted to see how the elite would react to being ruled by the lowest rung of society. He read the logs, the initial confusion, the breakdown of social order, the riots, the murders. It was a planned, deliberate descent into barbarism, orchestrated by a corporation for the sake of data. He felt a rage that was cold and pure. This world wasn't an accident. It was a crime scene. The bombs hadn't destroyed humanity. They had just revealed the monsters that had been wearing human faces all along. In Gotham, his enemies were psychotics, criminals who operated outside the system. Here, the greatest evil was the system itself. He returned to his cave beneath the metro tunnels, the Corser chip in one hand and the horrors of Vault 114 in his mind. The radiation sickness was getting worse. He would wake from feverish dreams, his body aching, his mind filled with the green glow of the sea and the sterile white walls of the Institute. He analyzed the chip, deciphering the Institute's teleportation technology. He could build a device to hijack their signal. He could get inside, but the question was no longer how. It was why. What was the point of stopping the Institute in a world so thoroughly damned? Father, the man who ran the Institute, believed humanity was a failure that needed to be replaced. After what he had seen in the glowing sea and in the vault, a dark part of him was beginning to agree. The Corser's logic, the Brotherhood's fanaticism, Vault-Tec's sociopathy, they were all different flavors of the same poison. He looked at his own reflection in a dark computer screen. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. The symbol on his chest seemed like a joke, a bat trying to scare away a nuclear holocaust. He had come here to bring justice. But what did justice mean in a world where the laws of nature and morality had been rewritten by radiation and despair? He was breaking down piece by piece. His body was failing. His certainty was cracking. The wasteland was winning. It wasn't killing him with bullets or claws. It was digesting him, slowly, stripping away the man he was, and leaving only the mission. A mission whose purpose he no longer fully understood. He had to stop the Institute. He had to, because if he didn't, it meant that everything he had ever fought for in this world and his own was a lie. He worked with a feverish intensity. His workshop in the metro tunnels became a chaotic mess of wires, vacuum tubes, and salvaged circuit boards. Every movement was an effort. A tremor had started in his hands, a constant reminder of the radiation rewriting his body from the inside out. He built the molecular relay interceptor, a marvel of reverse-engineered technology. It was his way in, his one shot at the heart of the conspiracy. As he powered it on, the machine whirred to life, a low hum that vibrated through the floor. He stood on the platform, the Corser chip integrated into his gauntlet. He took one last look at his makeshift cave, a tiny pocket of order in a universe of chaos. Then he activated the sequence. The world dissolved into a blinding flash of blue light. It was a violent tearing sensation, as if every atom in his body was being ripped apart and put back together. He materialized in a clean room, pristine and white. The air was cool, filtered and sterile. After the filth and decay of the wasteland, the cleanliness felt obscene. He was inside the Institute. He was inside the belly of the beast. He moved through the white corridors like a virus. The scientists and staff stared at him, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. He was an anomaly, a ghost from the dead world above that they had tried so hard to forget. Alarms began to blare and white-armored synths swarmed the halls, but they were no match for him. He was not there to fight. He was a phantom, using the Institute's own labyrinthine layout against them. He had one target: Father. He found him in the observatory, looking down at the synthetic gorillas in the habitat below. The old man was frail, connected by tubes to a humming machine. He turned as Batman entered, his eyes old but sharp. There was no surprise on his face, only a weary curiosity. "The anomaly," Father said, his voice calm, almost welcoming. "I have been watching your progress. You are a remarkable creature. So much order, so much control. In another life, you would have made an excellent scientist. Your experiments are over," Batman growled, his voice weak from the sickness but still full of menace. Father smiled sadly. "Experiments? No, this is not an experiment. This is the future." He gestured to the pristine facility around them. "Look, no radiation, no disease, no chaos. We are the last hope for humanity. The people on the surface had their chance, and they threw it away in a blaze of nuclear fire. They are savages, living in filth, killing each other for scraps. They are a dead end." He offered Batman a chair. "I know about your condition," Father continued, his tone gentle. "The radiation is killing you. We can stop it. We can cure you. We have technology you can only dream of. You value order. You value control. So do we. Join us. Help us bring a true, lasting peace to the Commonwealth. A peace built on logic and science, not on superstition and violence." It was the ultimate temptation, an end to his pain, a chance to achieve his life's mission, to impose a perfect, unbreakable order on a broken world. The Corser's logic echoed in his mind, no longer a whisper, but a roar. This was salvation. This was the logical endpoint of his own crusade. He looked at his trembling hands, at the specter of a slow, painful death. He thought of the horrors he had seen, the raiders, the experiments in the vaults, the mindless slaughter. Perhaps Father was right. Perhaps humanity was a failed project. But then he remembered something else. He remembered the settlers in the church, banding together to survive. He remembered Deacon's cynical idealism, fighting a hopeless war for the freedom of synthetic beings. He even remembered the confused look on the Corser's face in its final moments. There was still a spark, a flicker of choice, of hope, of humanity in the darkness. Father's plan wasn't salvation. It was a cage, a clean, sterile, comfortable cage. "You don't want to save humanity," Batman said, his voice finding a new strength. "You want to replace it. You've forgotten what it means to be human, to struggle, to fail, to choose to be better even when it's hard. That's the part you can't build in a lab." He rejected the offer. He rejected the cure. He chose the broken, messy, painful world on the surface because it was real. Father's face fell, the mask of civility replaced by a cold disappointment. "A pity. You are making the same mistake they all did." Batman turned away from the old man. "I'm not here to destroy you," he said. "I'm here to expose you." Before the Institute could react, he executed his real plan. He was not just a warrior. He was the world's greatest detective. He had found their central database, the core of all their research and secrets, and he had planted a virus, not a destructive one. A broadcast virus. He activated it. All across the Commonwealth, radios crackled to life, Pip-Boy screens flickered, terminal monitors changed. It was all there. Every dark secret of the Institute, the kidnappings, the replacements, the FEV research. But he didn't stop there. He had also found the Vault-Tec archives, stored deep within the Institute's network. He broadcast those too. The truth of the vaults, the cruel experiments, the corporate greed that helped end the world. He gave the people of the Wasteland the one thing no one ever had. The truth. The Institute plunged into chaos. As their secrets were laid bare for the world to see, Father initiated the reactor's self-destruct sequence. If he couldn't have his future, he would burn it all. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. "You've killed us all, you fool!" Father screamed over the din. "You killed yourselves a long time ago," Batman replied. He escaped during the evacuation, using the chaos as cover. He hijacked the teleporter one last time, sending himself to a random location on the surface, far from the blast radius. The light faded, and he collapsed onto the cracked earth, the Institute detonating behind him in a silent, underground fireball. He lay there for a long time, listening to the static-filled radio broadcasts. He heard the voices of the people, confusion, anger, but also, for the first time, understanding. They knew who their real enemies were now. Not just each other, but the ghosts of the old world that had haunted them for 2 centuries. He had not saved them. He had given them the weapon they needed to save themselves. The truth. His body was broken. The radiation had won. He felt his skin tightening, his hair falling out. The pain was excruciating, a fire in his bones. This was the end. But as consciousness faded, he realized it wasn't an end. It was a metamorphosis. The radiation sickness was not just killing him. It was preserving him in a horrific new form. His wounds began to heal, the skin knitting back together, but it was grey and dead. He was becoming a ghoul. He awoke days later. He was no longer a man. He was a monster, his flesh ravaged by radiation, but his mind was still his own. He was immortal, cursed to walk this broken world forever. He looked at his monstrous hands, and for a moment, he despaired. But then he remembered his vow. The vow he made in an alley in a world that was now just a memory. It was a promise to fight for the innocent, a promise to be a terror to the guilty. That promise did not die with his humanity. He became a new legend, a ghost story whispered by raiders around their fires. They spoke of a creature that hunted in the darkest corners of the wasteland, a thing that looked like a ghoul but moved with the speed and purpose of a demon, a creature they called the Ghoul Bat, a relentless, immortal symbol of justice in a land that had forgotten the meaning of the word. He did not break the wasteland's cycles of violence. He became a new one, a permanent, terrifying consequence for the wicked. He had finally become what he had always claimed to be, a ghost, a shadow forever.